your mind.
Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. We're in Studio 2 tonight, so we're trying out the new equipment, and hopefully we're sounding okay. Fingers crossed. Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind. It's Sunday the 1st of... I was going to say 1st of Feb 2015. Boy, is time flying very fast at the moment. Now, we have a great guest on tonight, a chap called Patrick Kelly. Patrick was on the show before, probably about 2 years ago. And we were talking about free energy devices and all kind of things, engineering and techie and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be getting Patrick in the next few minutes. As usual, we have a few things to talk about. But first, we'll find out what the communication channels are.
Yes, communication channels, please.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
046 927 1212 is the magic number. We also have the chat room on the website tonight. We're going to be monitoring that. We're also going to be monitoring the People's Internet Radio chat room as soon as I log into it. I forgot to do that. We also have on the website, we have the link for Facebook, the anti-social media. We're on there. And we also have the link for YouTube, where you can catch up on a lot of our podcasts. So there you go, all bases covered. We're also on the TuneIn Radio app as well. And again, Steve sounds like a Dalek. I do apologise for sound issues, but it was kind of lastminute.com issues arose, so we'll try to do our best.
No problem at all. Okay, right, a couple of things that we're going to talk about before we get our guest on, just the things that happened during the week. Now, last Sunday I did say to you that on Monday I'd be heading down to Trim Court, and we did pop down there and met a few people, gave out a few flyers, had a chat with them. And it was a good day overall. There was a couple of us down there from Land League, and we were doing a bit. So, again, you know, a few people educated as to what way the system works and how it's going on. So that was dealt with there. So it was good. A good time was had by the people, by ourselves down there. Under the circumstances, obviously, with repossessions going on and everything else, is not very nice. The other thing that was during the week that I heard about politicians this week, that the golfers put their fingers up to see which way the wind is blowing, but politicians put their fingers up to see which way the money is blowing, which I thought was quite appropriate for politicians, you know. That's just kind of where the padded envelopes are, I suppose. Now, I'm not kind of saying that all politicians are like that, if anything, but you know yourself. We all know that there's sometimes the padded envelopes being passed around the place. Right, the other thing on the list is basically the protest that was in Dublin yesterday. I managed to get down to the Kells protest, and I was involved in the Kells protest, and we went down and we did a bit down there. There wasn't that many down there. There's probably about 40, 50 people at most in the Kells protest, but I do believe numbers are coming in between 60 and 70,000. I'm not too sure on the numbers, but I believe it's between 60 and 70,000, so I've heard, which is great, a great turnout. And long may that continue. We keep carrying on doing that. I mean, we have to keep an eye on what Greece are going to do, and then obviously the Spanish. I think it's the Portuguese. It's the Portuguese, or Spanish. The next party, Steve.
Sorry, I appear to be having some technical difficulty here, hearing what you're saying. Sorry, I was just communicating there with Vin is going to restream us on PIR because the code isn't working this end, so apologies there. I did hear you say about 70,000 in the protest. Yeah, it depends on who you listen to. I think when RTE were reporting, they said there was like 12 people. Well, maybe not 12, but they gave a very, very, very low numbers. So, yeah. Was there many at the Kells one?
That's, about 40 to 50, as I said, 40, 50 or so.
1,000?
I wish. How was your week anyway?
My week's been fine. Nothing really prepared, to be completely honest with you, for the week. We're all kind of sick in this household. We all have a head cold, and there's a couple of chest infections going about, so I haven't really been doing too much except for feeling sorry for myself. And those nurses that you were supposed to send down during the week to mop my brow, they never arrived. But yeah, I mean, what's going on in the world? I think again, the Irish government are so disillusioned with the whole, with everything really, that it beggars belief. I think Enda Kenny, our fearless leader, he's on record now as saying him and the government are basically saying that the whole water protest thing, that we're wasting our time. I always thought protests were a waste of time. When you see the protests that are going on in some of the other countries, where there's violence on the streets and there's clashes between the police and protesters. I'm not saying violence is the way to go, but it seems to be the only way that the government appear to listen to the will of the people. I think us going out and stomping our feet and walking up and down and singing a couple of songs and, you know, hoping we're going to make an impact, I don't think it will. I think the real impact will be made when the bills come out for the Irish water, and when people decide, well, we've had enough and we're definitely not paying. I mean, people have been saying all along that they're not going to pay, but when the bills come out and they send them back, I think that'll be when the government will stand up and take note. But I think Enda Kenny and his cronies yesterday went on record as saying that all these protests, it's not going to make an ounce of difference. They've listened to the people, allegedly, and they have revised the payment system and revised this, that and the other, and they're saying that you know, this is as good as it gets, take it or leave it. Well, actually, they're not really saying take it or leave it, they're saying take it or take it. But yeah, I mean, I think they're just disillusioned. They really are. The will, or what the people are thinking at the moment is the government has to go, and I think everyone would agree they have to go. They're running this country into the ground, and I mean, in relation to the whole water thing, I had a phone call during the week, actually, a chap that I know, he rang me, and he rings me from time to time and he wants to know how it's going, what's the word on the street in relation to the protest, and he said to me, has anyone looked at it from this angle? Now, I don't think anyone has, I'm not sure, but the angle he was saying was, if they're trying to sell the water to us as a food, I mean, because water is life, so they're going to be, they're trying to sell it to us, even though they say they're selling a service. If you don't pay for the service, then they cut off your water, so therefore you're paying for the water. They want you to pay for the water. But he was saying, if this water is supposed to be a foodstuff, then it obviously has to be regulated, and therefore it has to pass some tests to make sure that it's fit for human consumption. And I don't think it's passed any tests. I don't believe there has been any tests done on the water, because if there was, I think they'd fail outright anyway, because of all the poison that's in it and the fluoride. But that's kind of really, that's what's been on my agenda for the week, just kind of watching that and see how that's panning out. I haven't really been doing too much research at all, so I do apologise for that. I should have done something, but sorry. How's your week?
Not too bad. I believe he does talk about more tax penalties on the way. Enda Kenny, I don't know, I've just seen something on Facebook earlier today regarding tax penalties, so more budgets, I suppose. It doesn't surprise me. Just a couple of things. TheGuardian.com. The Guardian was saying, with growing inequity and the civil unrest from Ferguson and the Occupy protests fresh in people's mind, the world's super rich are already preparing for the consequences. At a packed session in Davos, former hedge fund director Robert Johnson revealed that worried hedge fund managers were already planning their escapes. I know hedge fund managers all over the world who are buying airstrips and farms in places like New Zealand because they think they need a getaway, he said. Well, I suppose it doesn't surprise me with everything that's going on. Well, a lot of countries kind of standing up now, loads and loads of countries with people protesting and giving it about what's going on. And enough's enough, really, at the end of the day. I think people's had enough of this austerity. Well done to Greece. Well done to for what they did, and as I say, I think I'm not too sure, maybe somebody can tell us, Spain or Portugal, if it's one of them anyway. I forget off the top of my head. So much more going on in my head at the moment. Again, great to be in the cows protest yesterday with the water as well. And the last thing I have on my list, that I was sent over a video by the video report from James Gilland, as we're on James's mailing list, and there was a video link information saying that Yellowstone, according to the experts, is due to go off in the next 2 weeks. Now, if you want to see this, if you go over to Facebook, you'll actually see the video posted up there. You make your own mind up with the information. It's not fear porn, it's just information. And you make your own mind, listen to it and see what you think, But I know we've heard this time and time again, over and over again. We get dates and all that kind of stuff, so we can't really, believe everything. But it's out of interest. Some people are interested in it, so I just put it up on Facebook. You can have a look at it there. And we might send out the links if we have time. Now, the last thing on the list before we get Patrick in is, I was speaking to the manager of the local super value where I am, and he's agreed that if we can give him the product information and product codes of non-fluoride toothpaste, of cordial drinks that don't contain aspartame, and all kind of anything that's pretty good, he will do his best to get it in to give their shoppers a choice.
Well, that's really proactive of him.
Because I was talking to him one day, and I pointed out to him, I said, can you show me a cordial drink here that doesn't contain aspartame? He couldn't. They all had aspartame. I said, can you show me toothpaste here that doesn't contain fluoride? He says, I can't. They all contain fluoride. And I said, don't you think people want to have a choice?
But did you educate him as to the dangers of fluoride?
He's aware of it.
Oh, okay.
He's aware of it. So, and he's been the manager there for a long time, I believe. So we need help from our listeners. If you use products that are non-fluoride, non-aspartame, cordial drinks or toothpaste or anything that you think would be good, we might be able to start something here. But the local super value said the manager will look into getting the products in if we can give him the product name and the actual product code or the barcode apparently. So if you have any products that you use, please scan them in, send them over to us on email, info@oymradio.com, and hopefully we can get the local super value to start the chain moving, and we'll be able to get the products in. And, move away from all the kind of products that they kind of force on us. We have no choice on the matter.
I don't think, to be honest, I think the cordial drinks, the most you're going to get there is non-fluoride, or not aspartame. I think they're all going to contain fluoride, to be completely honest.
What, the cordial drinks?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're made from water.
Well, yeah. Depends where you get them, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had this issue a couple of months back where I contacted several manufacturers in relation to soy milk, because we use soy milk here at home, and they done some research for me and sent me back some information on relation to the soy milk where they buy the water to mix with the soybeans. And I contacted these 3 different companies in the UK, and two out of the 3. They bought their water from 2 different water companies, and it was fluoridated. And the third one wasn't so sure. They said they'd let me know, and they did come back and they did say that there wasn't fluoride as such, but there was naturally occurring fluorine, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah.
Well, see, Asda do cordial, and I don't know where the Asda is. Their Asda brand is actually bottled. So
yeah, that's the thing. If you don't know where the water comes from, you're snookered, really.
Well, maybe somebody does know a cordial that doesn't have fluoride in it, and it doesn't have aspartame. Let us know, because I know our listeners have a wide range of knowledge and experiences and products and everything else. So somebody might have come across it. So if you do, let us know, and we'll be happy to push that information down. Now I'm just looking at the chat facility here. The whole kind of Yellowstone thing, it's nothing got to do with Niraboo. It's just saying they're due. It's due to go bang, basically. And the video is these are the geologists that are talking about this. They're the ones who are saying it's 2 weeks. It's not some guy standing there in Yellowstone. It's actually the geologists are saying that it's going within 2 weeks, give or take. But again, as I say, put it on the fence. Keep an open mind. That's why we give the information out there. You make your own choice as to what you want to do. Right. Okay. Now, the chap we had on, our guest is Patrick Kelly. We had Patrick on a couple of years ago, and the interview went there brilliant. We were talking about all kinds of stuff, free energy stuff, magnetics. And Patrick gave us a list of things that we said that we didn't talk about on the show. And to be honest with you, I don't know what they are. But that's the whole idea of getting Patrick in, because I'm sure he's going to tell us what they are. Good evening, Patrick. How are you?
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
I can indeed. Thanks a lot for coming back on. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me. If I may, I'd like to make 2 comments on what you've already said.
Yeah.
One of them is on Yellowstone Park.
Yeah.
Yellowstone Park is not just a volcano, it's a super volcano.
Yeah.
And the ground is already dished up by 7 or 8 feet to 2.5 meters over what it used to be.
Okay.
If that goes, it's something really major. It's overdue by about 400 years, but that's only a very vague and rough estimate.
Yeah.
If it does go, it'll be a major thing, and not just in America, but you're liable to guess the equivalent of a nuclear winter from it.
Yeah.
So it's not something which is in the least amusing. The other thing is about water being cut off. I don't know what the situation is legally in Ireland. In the UK, the water companies are not allowed to disconnect a user who doesn't pay.
Okay, well, over here, they're trying to charge us for the water. Now, we've already paid for the water through our taxes, and we're not paying again. And this is what all the protesting is all about, Patrick. And we had the threats from one politician who said that they're going to send the men out to turn the water down to a trickle to your house. And everybody's saying, well, we don't see how they're going to be able to do that. It's either on or off, really. And if they use a meter to do that, people have been taking the meters out anyway. We call them meter fairies. And the meters have been taken out, and just a stopcock put in, just a little plastic, like a washer that you put in after taking the meter off. So, it's all threats. It really is threats from the Irish government. That's all it is. We paid for the water already, so we're not paying for it again. That's basically what we're saying. As opposed to the Yellowstone thing, I will send you all the link, Patrick. You can have a look at it yourself. But as I say, these are geologists saying this. And they're saying that, some people are saying, it might never go off. But these guys are kind of saying, well, okay, 2 weeks, give or take, Now, as you said, it's not a normal volcano. It's the caldera. It's massive. And if this goes off, we're looking at like a really, really, I suppose you call it a nuclear winter. Now, they did a BBC documentary about this in the early 2000s, what if scenario, and you can go to YouTube and see it. And they show you everything that's going through the whole process of what happens, the build up to it, and when it happens. It's quite serious. If this does go off, then it's going to affect an awful lot, and not maybe the US, it'll probably affect Europe as well. If that dust, volcanic dust, comes over through the jet stream, I don't know.
Yes, it will indeed. It will go a lot of places, and it will have a really major impact. It will definitely happen. The question is when. And I would assess that the geologists are generally guessing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they did say that there was melting up over in Yellowstone, and there was a lot of the USGS have been very, let's say, very. They've been updating the website, but leaving some of the information out so it doesn't look too bad. They've been very, very covert with the data going on the website. I don't know whether you noticed that or you've heard about that.
Well, the thing is, if you were a geologist, how would you know when it was going to blow? The answer is there is no way.
Yeah.
So people are effectively guessing as to what's going to happen and when.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope that the 2 weeks' time is an incorrect guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
because this is a major thing that will kill a very large number of people.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. I mean, dates come and go all the time. We hear about dates all the time on Open Your Mind. And it's not fear porn or anything like that. What we do is we just put it out there. We let people know and let them make up their own mind and let them decide for themselves. That's really all we do. That's the whole idea behind it. But, okay, Patrick, let's, for people who don't know or haven't heard of you, and don't know about you, can you give us a quick bio of who you are and what you do?
I'm elderly and retired at this stage. I have been looking at what's generally known as free energy systems for 10 or 20 years now. I was trained in Dublin, and I went through Trinity College, and got a degree in engineering. But the reality is that the world is nothing actually like what people are taught in schools and universities. It just isn't like that. But let me give you a general overall view of what free energy is about. First of all, the people who are running the countries, most of the countries, are doing it at a very considerable profit. The profit goes into their pockets. One of the most common things that they do is they invent a thing called national debt. National debt doesn't actually exist. We don't really know, most people don't really know what it's about. But effectively, it's a case of the government, which is entitled to print money, doesn't do it. Instead, they get a private company to print money for them, but instead of paying for it all, they allow the private company to keep quite a fair percentage, something like 20% or 17.5%. But the company, being cunning, doesn't actually take that amount. It takes maybe half of it and leaves the other half to gain interest. And they do that year after year. And most tax money goes to pay the people who have been in on this swindle for years and years and years. In America, I believe that something like 80% of all income tax is given over to people who are running this scam. Generally, they're referred to as the New World Order, NWO. But there are various people. But anyway, leaving that aside for the moment, let me give you a general sketch of what free energy is really about. The main objective is to extract as much money from you as possible. And to do that, they say, to get energy or to travel, you need to have and burn a fuel. And they say, we like you burning a fuel, we'll provide the fuel, and you can pay us for it. In actual fact, originally, the earliest cars in America were the Model T Ford, and Ford was intending to make those cars self-propelling using a magneto designed by Nikola Tesla. But they were persuaded at the last minute to use a waste product from the oil industry, which they called gasoline, which we nowadays call petrol in this area. And the early stages, there were next to no filling stations. So the way that they were operated was, there were about 50,000 farms in America, North America, which each had a still and used that still to produce alcohol. Alcohol is a very useful fuel around farms, can be used to run tractors, and in the early stages it was used to run cars. So if you had a Model T Ford in the early days in America, and you needed to go on a long journey, as there were very few filling stations with petroleum, they would fill up at some convenient farm, and they would fill up on alcohol, and the Model T Fords would run very nicely on the alcohol. But when the petroleum industry got into full swing, they wanted to choke off those 50,000 farms. So they introduced a thing called Prohibition in North America. People had got the impression that Prohibition was to do with humans drinking alcohol, and had nothing whatsoever to do with humans drinking alcohol. The sole purpose was to drive out of business those 50,000 alcohol stills in the farms, so that all cars everywhere in the States had to run on gasoline. So the general thing that you need to realize about what you've been taught and told and shown is that nearly all of it is wrong, and deliberately so. So we have a large amount of engineering techniques and methods taught to us as education. For example, when I was in school, which is a long time ago now, they were demonstrating something that showed how vessels, boats and the like, would float. Archimedes was credited with saying, I understand it now, the reason the boat floats is it pushes aside an amount of water which is equal in weight to the boat. Well, that's a nice theory, and that is perfectly true as far as it goes. But in the engineering techniques, they don't cover everything. And in school, I was shown, in fact we all were shown obviously, how to float a brass weight in mercury, but the mercury weighed less than the brass weight. Now, according to engineering equations, that's not possible. It actually is possible, of course. The reason it was possible is that a glass container, which was very close to the size of the brass weight, was used with little mercury in it. And when you sat the brass weight down in it, it pushed the mercury aside and up the sides of the glass container, and your heavy brass weight floated in mercury, which weighed less than the brass weight. Now that's the sort of situation that you get in energy generation. The engineering equations say you can't get more out than you put in. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Now the question is, if that's so, what about sailing boats? They travel all the way around the world, and if you were doing it with a boat with an engine, you would use a large amount of fuel to do that. But sailboats do it without any fuel at all, and a lot of people do it for fun these days. Originally it was done for economic reasons. But that's the situation we have typically in all branches of engineering. Let me give you a quick run through. You can get power from gravity. Now, first of all, there are a lot of systems that we know that use gravity. For instance, there are electro-hydraulic systems which generate electricity from water flowing from a large body of water, typically a reservoir or a very large river, and fall down quite a distance physically, and while falling, spin a generator which produces electricity. That's fine. That's something that everybody knows, but nobody seems to question. The power for that comes from the sun, which heats water in the oceans, produces water moisture, which is blown over land, drops as water, rain typically, into these large reservoirs, and keeps the system going forever and ever. You also have very well-known systems where water flowing downriver is used to power a water wheel, and that has been used for grinding grain and producing all sorts of useful things like hammering movements and the like for many, many decades. I mean, you're talking 200 or 300 years at least at this stage. You can also use the movement of the sea, either as wave power or by the sea flowing in and out of a large area which is throttled down by building walls so that the water has to flow through a fairly narrow entrance. That is a very effective way of generating power. Now those things are well known, most people know about them, they're obvious, and they don't stress the point that what you're getting there is free energy. It's energy that you don't have to pay for. You don't have to buy a fuel and burn it to generate this electricity. There are a lot of systems like that, though, that are useful for, say, you and me, if we want to produce electricity for our own purposes. For instance, a typical system is a flywheel. Now, a flywheel is supposed in engineering to iron out differences and irregularities in any form of drive system. Well, it does appear to do that, certainly, but the point that is very carefully ignored is the fact that every time you put a pulse of energy into a flywheel, you actually gain more energy which is drawn in from outside. We live in a sea of energy. There's just so much there that you can hardly understand how much there is. For instance, if you stand up straight on the ground, your head is some hundreds of volts higher voltage than your feet. And you can actually use that difference, that voltage difference, if you use an aerial and some circuitry to collect the power. There are lots of ways of doing that. There are other methods too, and if, for instance, you were to use a water pump, a high-speed water pump, and play that onto what people in engineering would call a badly designed flywheel, one that has only 4 or 6 paddles and is not a smooth running device, but runs with pulses, you can get a large amount of extra energy from that. There's a patent by James Tardy showing that, and he demonstrates it on YouTube, where the jet of water spins a wheel. The wheel turns an ordinary generator. The generator powers the water pump and powers a large electric light bulb. Now that's just a demonstration on YouTube.
Yeah.
But the point is, you couldn't possibly do that unless you were pulling in extra energy from outside. There's a guy in Australia called Chas Campbell, and he for some years has been experimenting with flywheels that are linked to a motor. He starts with a small mains motor and spins it and uses a drive chain of 3 or 4 V-belts and pulleys, and spins at the end a generator. And then he uses the generator output to power the input motor and power other things as well. Now, he's offered this for free to the power companies near him and to the government. They don't want to know. They're not interested in what he's doing. They don't want free energy. They don't want us to know about free energy. There's a very interesting video, in fact, on a gravity-operated device from William Skinner. It was published in 1939, just at the beginning of World War II, and he demonstrates on the video a mechanical device which is effectively the same as a chair, a heavy chair with 4 legs, being tipped up so that it balances and then spun by just gently moving the top. That generates a lot of excess power because the chair itself is always falling under gravity and never ever getting to the bottom. And that falling under gravity produces power which can be used. Now in William Skinner's particular video, he powers a 20-foot machine lathe which can take slices off a steel bar. He does, at the same time, operates a hammer, and there is, what else is it? He's one other thing that he operates in his mechanical machine shop. Now this is in 1939, where electricity wasn't commonly used for much, but his drive system is a piece of thread. He drives that entire system, including the lathe, with a piece of thread. One small electric motor with a thread link to drive the rest of the thing. This is another way that gravity is used to produce excess power, which is useful.
But
there's one other guy, a Russian guy, called Mikhail Dmitriev, who has a very neat system. He puts a whole series of weights onto a big wheel. He mounts the wheel so it's vertical, and he uses a small motor to push the weights on one side out a bit. So the motor rotates all the time, pushes the weights out. That unbalances the wheel, and you get a very large amount of excess energy from that. He is at the moment, I believe, trying to market something between 1 kilowatts and 5 kilowatts based on that system. But this is just one area. Gravity also can be used with buoyancy. And if you use a large column of water and pump in or use from a compressed gas cylinder, either air or some convenient gas in the bottom, You can use that to fill inverted buckets on a chain. And those inverted buckets rise with considerable power continuously and produce a very large amount of output power. There's a guy called James Kwok in Australia who is selling systems, fairly complicated systems, the way he does it. It doesn't have to be that hard. But he sells systems which he calls hydro, H-I-D-R-O. And he's selling like 100 kilowatt systems based on just buoyancy. That's one aspect from gravity. There are other ways of doing it. There are quite a number.
Yeah.
Another way of doing it is that you can use a thing called a Joe cell. This is something that's very, very heavily opposed by the powers that be, with people being intimidated left, right and centre for doing it. But the Joe cell doesn't use any fuel, it doesn't have any moving parts, and it will drive a vehicle without any fuel at all. A friend of mine called Bill Williams in the States built a version of his own, and he attached it to his Ford truck, his pickup truck, and found that it performed with enormous power. He eventually stopped using it because his family was being threatened by armed men. But that's fairly typical. I mean, Joe Noble in Australia did the same thing, and he had to escape out into the bush after his dog was killed and he was attacked. Nowadays, there are methods of doing that don't even involve a Joe cell. A Joe cell is vertical stainless steel cylinders with water placed inside them. The water isn't used, nothing is used. The power is led to the engine and fed in either through the carburetor or just connected to a bolt on the actual engine block. So that's another way of producing very large amounts of power for nothing. There are also pyramids. Sorry, you want to speak?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, that audio's gone a bit funny there, Steve. 1, 2, yeah. Is that, yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, that's better, yeah. I was just going to say, Patrick, there, that before we kind of get into this stuff, let's look at what we're being told by the mainstream media and by the governments. I mean, people go on about the law of physics, and they say you can't break the law of physics. Now, I think before on the show I did mention a Japanese guy who produced something like 40,000 magnetic motors, which he's selling. And he invited the Free Energy Consortium over to have a look at this, because he showed 2 multimeters and there's more energy coming out than what was put in, which the law of physics says he can't do. And so they flew over there and they had a look at his magnetic motors, and they were scratching their head saying, where is it coming from? And he said, well, I'm not breaking the law of physics, there's just other energy that's there. Now also you have it's gone out of my head now, the element, what you call it, the periodic table, that's it. And I was told by a chap who does inventing, and he fixes cars and stuff like that, but he invents stuff as well, and he said, purposely there are some chemicals taken off the periodic table because they relate to free energy. So, do you want to kind of fill the gap there? Let's take it from there and just talk about the law of physics and why these scientists keep saying, oh, you can't break the law of physics, that's impossible, it can't be done. Why are they saying it?
They're saying that because of economic pressure. The people who develop science nowadays tend to be based in universities, and it's postgraduate work. Now, the universities are run by a professor, typically of physics, who is in charge of the people who are developing projects and doing investigations and research using the university's equipment. Now, the professor, to stay in business, has to publish a scientific paper, serious scientific paper, breaking new ground, typically at least once a year. Now, to do that, he has to have people working on projects in the university. And to do that, you have to have grants from rich people. And the rich people tend to be the people who sell oil products and swindle in other ways. So they generally have the opportunity to say which projects, development projects, will be acceptable and which won't. And that's the reason why you'll get people in universities swearing to high heaven that you can't do this and you can't do that. But the reality is that engineering and physics laws, as they're so called, some of which are completely wrong anyway, a lot of them are based on the theory of a closed system. Now, a closed system is supposed to be a system whereby nothing flows in from the outside and nothing flows out from the inside. There aren't any of those in this universe. I can tell you that straight off. And the only difference between experiments on Earth and experiments in deep space is a lack of air and a difference in temperature. And that's it. You cannot stop gravitational effects. You can't have a closed system that doesn't have gravity or magnetism. You may manage to smother magnetism, perhaps, if you put an awful lot of effort into it. But you've got to block off magnetism and cosmic particles, electromagnetic radiation. So in other words, you couldn't operate a TV set inside your closed system. And these things just don't happen. We don't have any of those. We couldn't make any if we wanted to. So a lot of these equations are deliberately wrong. For instance, there's a guy called Joseph Papp, who he took an ordinary Volvo car with a 90 horsepower engine. He blocked off the intake, and he blocked off the outlet, and filled the crankcase with a mixture of inert gases. And he ran that indoors as a demonstration for 40 minutes, producing 300 horsepower on a pony brake to demonstrate the fact that there was a lot of power there. No intake, no outlet, no fuel, and 300 horsepower continuously. I mean, in the early days, the equations for flight, aircraft flight, were built up and developed, and they worked well. They were used for designing aeroplanes that flew well, and there was a bit of a problem later on because somebody had tried applying them to bumblebees, and they deduced from those equations that bumblebees couldn't fly. That's just not possible. But bumblebees fortunately didn't know that and went on flying. The thing is, the engineering equations and the physics equations are all right in the limited fields that they're applied to, but they're not complete. There are a lot of other things that are not covered by those equations. For instance, I've been talking about gravity, and I really need to apologize for that because there isn't any such thing as gravity. And I do apologize for using the sloppy term and referring to what people think of as gravity itself. There isn't any such thing. What you have is an energy field which is in all of the universe. It's called the zero-point energy field or orgone energy. There are lots of different names for this thing. One of the common names is ambient background energy. Now that's all around us, and it's billions and billions of times more powerful than anything we use. Now that energy field, when it bumps into a lot of matter, like say the Earth, a lot of some of the energies, a tiny proportion of it, is absorbed and powers the actual material of the Earth itself, which means that the other side is got slightly less pushing outwards from the surface of the Earth itself, and the unobstructed energy field pushing down towards the Earth. And that difference is what we call gravity. I mean, the reality of where we live and what our universe is and how it operates and how it's affected is so different to what we're taught that really it's intended as an obstacle to make it difficult for us to understand where we're at and what we can do. For instance, you were talking about engines there. Well, Caltech in the USA took an engine which was made by Marvin Cole from a design by Nikola Tesla, and they tested it, and they certified that it had 275 times more power coming out than going in.
That's phenomenal.
It has, from memory, they were using 27 watts of input electrical power, and they were getting 10 horsepower output.
Mm.
Now that's relatively minor in actual fact. I mean, there's a guy with a device called, well, how would you put it? There's a guy who has used the adjustment of a slab of magnetic material, in other words, a large permanent magnet, and oscillated it with a small signal. The signal was 0.13 milliwatts. In other words, it's less than, it's like 1,000th of 1 watt. It's so small that you would never see it. And he was pulling out of his system more than 500 watts of mains electricity. He was running bulbs very brightly. He was driving an electric fan. And this sort of operation, the amount of power coming out was about 1,300,000 times more than he was putting in. I mean, we just are not hitting the sort of level of performance that you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a tremendous amount there. And the things that are called laws in physics just aren't. I mean, Maxwell's equations covered the reality of most electromechanical devices. But they were, as soon as he died, they were taken and messed around. And parts of the equations were taken out because they weren't needed. And they simplified the equations if you took them out, which was the equivalent to saying, we're looking at a sailboat on an ocean, and the sailboat is picking up energy from the wind and sailing along. Now we can ignore the wind that doesn't touch the boat, because it doesn't actually impinge on the boat. What they ignore is the fact that that same wind could drive 1,000 other boats side by side.
Yeah.
So these are the sort of things that are deliberately foisted off on us. And they have managed to suppress, inside information I have says more than 44,000 American free energy patents. They have a very clever technique where they say, you're an inventor, you've invented something, we're going to say that this thing that you've invented is of national security importance.
Yeah.
So you may not make it, you may not speak of it, you may not publicize it, you may not sell it. If you do any of those things, we put you straight in jail and you can stay there for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and which has happened to a lot of people. If you're not being killed, they lock you away or they put you in a mental home or something. Before we go over to the questions, Patrick, the one thing I do want to talk to you about is the QEG, because I think before when you came on the show, I kind of have ideas regarding magnetics. I do believe that using magnetics that we can generate enough power to actually, my idea was to, and still is, if anybody's out there, if they want to, if they're any way knowledgeable about magnetics, is basically to build a unit to basically boost the power. Where it's like a little box that you put beside your TV, and you plug your TV in, or you put it beside your fridge, or put it beside your washing machine, and you plug it in, and you switch it on, and with the magnetics and inverting that, increasing the power, that you can just power your fridge or whatever, any device around your house, and you don't have to worry about the actual the electricity bill. It'll come down because it gets the power from this device. Now the QEG, I believe, is a step up, because the QEG actually is for your house in total.
That's correct, yes. There are lots of ways of doing this. Personally, I don't believe the QEG. I think it's a con. And I can tell you why. You'll find it actually in chapter 16 of my ebook if you ever want to check it out. But the thing is, first of all, it claims to give an output of 10 kilowatts and drive itself with an input of 1 kilowatt. So in other words, it's producing 11 kilowatts. Now, if it's doing that at our normal local 220 volts or whatever, that represents something like 50 amps of current. If it's going at 110 volts, which I think the original was aimed at, you're talking about roughly 100 amps. Now the thing is, the wire that they specify for this is American wire gauge number 10. Now that wire has, in a coil, has got a current rating of 15 amps. Now there are two windings. I don't think they're connected together in parallel. Let's say they are. If they are, then you can take 30 amps from it. But they claim that you can output 10 kilowatts. So you're looking at a minimum of 50 amps and probably 100 amps. So it just doesn't add up. The wire that they're specifying, if they're taking ordinary hot electricity, then it just can't possibly do it. If they're using cold electricity, which is drawn from the environment, then you don't need large wire at all. Small wire will do just fine. That's one of the reasons. There are other reasons. In their particular document, they say this is a patent from Nikola Tesla, which it is, and he says, look, you can produce a linear magnetic drive this way. And they say, right, well, we've taken that and we fixed it so that it goes round in a circle. That's something that pretty much never works. That's something you just can't really do. That just doesn't happen. You cannot take a straight path and turn it around. I have a system in the book whereby instead of doing that, if you take 4 very short straight drives and use them at 90-degree points around a circle, you should be able to drive the circle continuously. But it's only because you've got 4 short straight paths.
So has anybody actually produced a machine that they can hook up to your mains in your house and will actually power? I mean, a normal household takes probably about between 10 and 15 kilowatts, give or take. So has anybody actually produced a machine where they can actually take the wires out from the wall from your electrical supplier and stick it in the box and that's it, you're up and running?
Yes, yes indeed, lots of people have. The easiest way probably to do that is to use what's commercially available at the moment. And one of the easiest things is called a generator. It's intended to be run on petrol. So a petrol generator will give you some kilowatts of excess power. I think the power that you're quoting is a bit high.
Okay.
The largest item I have that draws power is just over 2 kilowatts. And that's a washing machine.
Right.
Or a tumble dryer. Besides which, obviously, you can have several of these things. Now, the usual method of you doing this is you take a standard generator, which has already got the motor built in for you. It already has the electrical output for you. It has got controls for the voltage and the frequency and everything.
Yeah.
But instead of running it on petrol, you run it on water. The way that you run it on water is you either buy or make a small electrolyzer, which is a container of water with maybe a little additive to help you along, and you put voltage, typically 12 volts, across it, and that turns the water into a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen, sometimes referred to as HHO. And you feed that HHO into the air intake of the generator, and you also feed in some cold water mist, which can be generated either with a Venturi tube or by a pond fogger. And that makes the generator operate as an internal combustion steam engine. And it works perfectly well doing that. And people have been doing that for many years. in places where there is no mains and there never will be, because it's just not economic. Now, the thing is, you have a problem with that. And the problem is that the HHO burns 1,000 times faster than droplets of petrol. Droplets of petrol take a little while to break down, and so the spark from the spark plug is timed before top dead center. Now, you can't do that with HHO, because if you do that with HHO, the exposure will come before the pistons reach the top, and it'll drive it backwards, which is not a great idea. So you have two options. One, either you slow down the way that the HHO burns, or you adjust the timing of your generator. You can adjust the timing of the generator quite easily by various simple mechanical techniques, which are shown in photographs and described step by step in Chapter 10 of my ebook, and have been for some years now. The other technique is very clever, and instead of using the HHO directly as it is, you pass it through, you bubble it through acetone, which is available quite cheaply. Hairdressers use it in volume. You put that into a stainless steel container, and you bubble the HHO through it, and that slows down the rate that it actually burns, and you can take an ordinary standard generator, no modifications, feed it HHO through acetone and cold water mist, and the thing works just fine. That's one way. There are other methods as well. There are people who have made generators which have got vast amounts of power. I mean, there was a guy called Clement Figura. He was an engineer in, I think where it was. It was the Canary Islands from memory. And he produced the method. He took out 4 patents, and he was paid quite a bit of money for it. And he died within days of actually producing the patent itself, the 4 patents. You'll find the details again in the ebook.
Okay.
And it's he was producing, I think it was something like 50 kilowatts. There are lots of other ways of doing it as well, including from an aerial. There are a lot of other methods and techniques. Splitting a transformer into 2 is a very effective way of boosting the power. The guy called Thane Hines, and he has bench tested an ordinary transformer which you rearrange to stop it diverting the magnetic flux back to oppose the input, and he's got more than 20 times the power coming out as going in. Tell me, how are we doing for time?
We're doing fine, but we have questions that we need to go over to. Okay. So I'd like to get started on the questions so we can get through them. So Steve has a list of questions there that we'll get through.
Sure.
Okay, just make sure my mic is up. There we go. Yeah, Patrick, we're going to start off with, I'm guessing everyone is probably wondering the same question here, but the first question is going to be, do you have any free energy devices in use in your home on a daily basis?
It's very difficult to hear you. Your transmission to me is poor quality. Could you say that again, please?
Sorry, is that better, Patrick?
Maybe slightly, I don't know.
Okay, I'm just wondering, do you have any free energy devices in use in your home on a daily basis?
That's something that I would not be willing to say. It's not a smart move to say that you do that. What I will say is, I built a very simple device, which is in Chapter 5 of the ebook, called a fleet toroid. It was a very simple plastic ring, about 8 inches across, and it was wound with ordinary wire from the local hardware shop, and I used 2 lead-acid batteries and a small circuit. The circuit is trivial. It's 1 transistor and 1 resistor or something equivalent to that, and I think I used 4 minor diodes. The value of the components in the circuit would have been 80p perhaps, something like that. Let's say €1. That's general. So this thing, I used 1 battery to power the circuit, and and I used the circuit to charge the other battery. And when I was finished, I swapped it over and did it again, and did it again, and did it again. And when I'd finished fiddling around with this, both batteries had considerably more genuine, usable electric power than when I started out. Now, the lead-acid battery design is only 50% efficient, which means that you have to pump in twice as much power to bring it back up to where you started. So the device I was using was definitely producing more than twice as much energy out as was required as input. So this is, in my book, without question, a definite demonstration of the reality of free energy. One other thing I should mention, and that a guy in South Africa has a little girl, and she has a toy car that she drives round in, driven by an ordinary car battery. And this guy used a circuit produced by Bob Boyce in the States, and when she finished and went to bed at night, he would connect this circuit to the battery in the car, and the circuit would charge the battery that was driving it. And he's done this many, many, many times. So the fact that we're told that you have to charge up batteries from an external power source is completely wrong. But I'm sorry that I'm not willing to answer that first question.
No, that's perfectly fine. No problem there at all. But I think you've also answered another question that was on the list from Patrick. Patrick was wondering, he said, or sorry, Chris was wondering, he says, Patrick is a great guest. My question is there anything simple that we can make or manufacture that can produce energy? But I think you've just about covered that anyway. You've said all the information is freely available in the e-book.
Oh, yes.
Which we'll get at the end of the show, obviously.
Yeah. And Graham on People's Internet Radio. Hi, Graham. Graham sent us over some information as well. There's a YouTube link, and he says, Stan Meyer's free energy water-powered car. He said Stan was murdered. He also said that bring a free device onto the market, and the inventors tend to disappear or get poisons or become victims of plane crashes. And I think we've covered that as well. And Graham was also wondering, can you ask Patrick if Nikola Tesla's tower was dismantled by the Rockefellers?
Well,
the tower was certainly taken down.
Yeah, Warcliffe, wasn't it? Is it Warcliffe Tower? Was the name?
Yes, it's Wardenclyffe was the name of the place.
Yeah.
The tower was definitely taken down. It was taken down primarily because there was no way of charging for the energy. And the people who make money from selling oil and power are not interested in giving free energy to people. They don't want people to have free energy. They want people to pay for energy.
Now, I do believe, Patrick, there's a couple of guys in, I think it's Russia, who's actually building one of these towers again, based on Tesla technology. And they're off doing it. I don't know what stage they're at the moment, but I suppose if people Google, you'll find out, or type in Wardenclyffe Tower, Russia, something like that, and I'm sure you'll find it. I did see an article saying that there was a couple of guys trying to replicate what Tesla did.
Yes, the people in Russia and in China have very little in the way of what they can buy, so they tend to have to build a lot of things, and they're very good at what they do. Now, in the ebook, there are photographs of somebody putting in 10 watts of power and getting a kilowatt of output power from quite a simple circuit. There's more than 100 different devices in the ebook, and there's enough information on most of them for you to be able to build them if you wanted to. There is no reason why you shouldn't if you wish to. There are lots of different things that you can do. I don't think transmitting power is the right thing to do, because it's like having the national grid that we have at the moment. If you get bad weather, a line goes out and they'll say, oh, we're sorry for there being a foot of snow, and we've got 60,000 people, 60,000 homes without electrical power. But we'll get to them in 2 or 3 days, and in 2 or 3 days' time they'll have power back again. I don't think that's the way to do it. The way for the convenience of people is to have a separate generator in every house.
Yeah.
Now, generators don't have to go round and round like the petrol generators I was talking about earlier. A lot of these systems have no moving parts at all. For instance, that Thane-Hines transformer, it's quite simple the way that it works. Transformers are organized at the moment, and motors, in such a way that you cannot possibly get more power out than you put in. But that's deliberate design. The way that they have it operated is, when you start drawing power from the output, the power that you draw out produces a magnetic field that's fed back through the frame of the transformer and opposes the incoming power in the primary coil. Now, that's done that way because they want it to be less than 100% efficient. If you change the arrangement and put two circular frames together, then you can fix it so that the magnetic power produced by the output doesn't go back to the input at all. And you get many times more power out when you do that. Now, that's a device that has no moving parts and will give you extra output from the mains input.
That's yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, we're going to get your details at the end of the show, Patrick, because your website is brilliant. It has so much stuff on it. It's going to be very interesting for a lot of people. Talking about the free energy, I know there's people out there probably frustrated saying, why can't people do this and the other? Well, to be honest with you, as Patrick said, it's very difficult. You don't want to go to patent office number one, because as soon as you do that, you put yourself on the radar. So you want to be doing this stuff, you know, on your own, and just between a group of people if you can, and develop it and get it out there for free. I mean, I know people want to kind of have build a free energy device and make loads of money on it. But at the end of the day, it's service to others as well. At the end of the day, if you can design something, or show people how to design it, because I know, Patrick, you probably have plans in your ebook, but some people are not competent with electronics, or doing any engineering stuff. It's not their bag. That's not what they do. But they'd happily pay somebody to, buy the parts and put it together. Now, if there were simple projects, as I say, the project I'm looking at would be a small device based on magnetics to, get enough power, 240 volts. I'm not too sure on the ampage, I had to check that, probably about 10 amps. Enough to actually power a TV or fridge and something like that, using magnetics. And it'd be a little box that you'd actually just put beside the item. Now, if there's somebody out there who understands magnetics, then I'd be happy to sit down and develop it with them. And then once we work out the parts and do all the testing, then it'd be brilliant. The other thing that I look at, Patrick, as well, is the fact that I look at alternators in cars, and you see the amount of windings in the coils in the alternator, and I'm convinced that the amount of power you could get from that, with all the windings and the coils, could be phenomenal if you knew what you were doing.
Yes, that's true. That is true. There are quite a number of things that will do what you're looking for. You mentioned 10 amps at 220 volts.
Yeah.
That's 2 kilowatts of power. More than 2 kilowatts. That's twice what I use to heat this place.
Wow.
So you're actually talking, to run a TV, you're talking probably 50 watts, which would be about a 20th of 5, which is half of an amp. It's about a quarter of an amp. About a quarter of an amp. And in the ebook there is a tutorial specifically intended that anyone who wants to can learn electronics from the ground up quite quickly and quite easily. Electronics is not difficult. I said to a guy when I was in university that I was going to learn electronics over the weekend, and he laughed his head off. During Monday I was able to design circuits. It's not difficult.
No, there is software out there. Just to let people know, there is a software program out there called LiveWire, not LimeWire, which is torrent, but it's live wire. You can actually buy it in PC World, not PC World, Maplins I think sell it, and it's called live wire. And basically what you can do is you install the software on your computer and you design a circuit, and you can actually test it on the computer before you build it to make sure that it's actually functioning okay. And if it tests and works on the computer, well, if you do exactly what's on the computer, then it'll work. So you can test it. It's called live wire. I believe there's another one called PCB that you can do that with as well. So for people who are interested in designing circuits. And electronics, I've done the electronics in my training a good few years ago, and it is great fun. It can be frustrating when you try to track down where the fault is, or there's a strand of wire somewhere. Myself and Steve are aware of that, where you come across a strand of wire and it's touching and you can't track it down, and you have to try and find it. But as I say, learning the electronics, this device I'm talking about, if you could produce, I don't know, maybe washing machines, probably 1400, 1600 watts of power. I don't know how many amps it take, but you'd want to kind of design a device that would be, powerful enough to power a washing machine, a fridge at least. So people would buy it, because there's no point if you're buying it and you just, using it for your TV, that's fine, and it's not a lot of power. But people want to reduce their energy bill, so it need to be a device where you could plug in your washing machine and it would power your washing machine.
That's a possibility, certainly. Just what I remembered, let me go back to your mention of patents. Patents are a private company run by the opposition, and their main objective is to stop you doing what you've just described. You can forget about a patent if you want to make anything. Now, the thing is, you cannot sell in most countries, probably almost certainly in Ireland, unless you have a certificate for health and safety. And they make quite sure that you won't get a certificate for any device that has a greater output than an input. So I would forget about that for the moment. What you could do as an initial stage is, if you build one of these Heinz type transformers, as a first step, instead of drawing 1600 watts on your washing machine, you would only be drawing 800 or 400 or 200 watts. Now, it's not self-powering the washing machine at all, but it's certainly reducing the cost very considerably. And something like that can be used not just with the washing machine, but with other things when you're not using the washing machine as a washing machine.
Yeah, I suppose that would be a good idea, doing it that way. Now, last year on the show, I did announce or talk about a company in America who were producing generators that were powered by water in America. It did come back to me, the memory link came back to me. Now, I don't remember the company, unfortunately, but I remember watching a video on YouTube, and the guy was there demonstrating the generators that worked on water.
Yes.
So they're already out there. They are bringing them out, and I believe the Japanese, there's some companies over in Japan actually doing the electric cars, but doing them properly, not doing the hybrids where you have the petrol and the actual electrics, but they're actually bringing them out. And the Tesla Motors are bringing out, they've got cars that run on salt water.
Yes, salt water is not the greatest. It's easier to run on river water or tap water or spring water. The chlorine in salt water is not really helpful at all. It's quite corrosive on the equipment that you use it in. Mm. But what time do we have to finish this?
Yeah, we have another 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, you have the ability to charge batteries very quickly, and in a method that draws in energy from outside. There are quite a number of simple methods of achieving quite large outputs, power outputs, from quite simple devices. But the subject is really so big that it's very difficult to actually pick on it. Let me give you one example. This is something that, for some unknown reason, doesn't seem to appeal to people. There's a design, again, I put it in the ebook, from a man called Coleman and his partner called Seddon Gillespie. And they have a tiny device, probably 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches, which will produce 1 kilowatt of power, typically for, they reckon, 70 years. It's cheap, and it's not that difficult to do. It's effectively one small tube with some simple chemicals in it, things like aluminium and copper powder. And it's something that's very straightforward and easy to do, especially for somebody who's keen on chemistry as a hobby. But like you say, the thing is, you can't conveniently produce something which will produce energy itself, a self-powered generator, and sell it to the general public. To sell it to the general public, you have to manufacture it. To manufacture it, you need finance.
Yeah.
To get finance, you need a patent. Otherwise, they're too scared to provide the finance. So the problem that we face is it is nearly impossible to make money, no matter how good your design is, on any of these things at all. For instance, Paul Zygouras in the States produced a very effective electrolyzer. He was using seawater because he was producing and is producing marine engines. And he found that he could actually hose water through a small device, and you'd only get gas out the far end. So in other words, you could attach the device to a tap, turn the tap on full, and you get gas out the far end. And the gas can be used to run an engine, and the engine can be used to produce the electricity to power it.
It's amazing how there's so much information out there, especially with the internet. And there's a lot of websites out there dealing with free energy and all this kind of stuff. But yet we're not really seeing it, or if we are, there are people out there probably keeping it quiet. Now, one chap I do know who lives locally, and I mentioned this before on the show, and he does have plans for a lot of free energy stuff, and I know he can do it. He ran his house on the generator for 2 years. He has what's called a transfer switch. And basically, when he wants to switch off, when he wants to come off the actual electric grid and go onto a generator, he just fixes a switch on the transfer switch, and he's on the generator. And he ran for 2 years on the generator. He produced his own biodiesel out of chip fat, and he was using that to actually power the generator. Now, he said to me that if you do it for yourself, they'll kind of say, well, they'll leave you alone. But if you start going around promoting it and telling people how to do it, then that's when the trouble will start.
That's exactly correct. Now, Paul Zygouras sold out for $6 million. And we don't have a design as such. We have enough information on it, probably to reproduce it if we wanted to. But as you say, doing it yourself, whether you use biodiesel or whether you use electrolysis or whatever, people aren't going to care very much. Bob Boyce in the States has produced a 4.2 kilowatt self-powered free energy generator. And he's made it for himself, and he's made it for several friends. And his main grouse is, when he gives it or sells it to a friend, the friend immediately comes back and says he wants another one because 4.2 kilowatts isn't enough.
Yeah.
But that's a lot more than I use. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably in a house with, I don't know about whether you have kids or anything at home, Patrick, but I suppose with the likes of kids and computers and everything plugged in, maybe that's why I'm getting my 10 kilowatt to 15 kilowatt on average, because between dishwashers and wash machines and fridges and all computers and games and TVs and skyboxes and all that, it all adds up a big drain on the system, I think. So even on a conservative 10 kilowatt, if you could design a device or have a device that you did about 10 kilowatts of power, and you're only using about, I mean, I know there's generators out there that you can get up to 5 kilowatt. I mean, they're pricey, but you can get them. Yeah,
now the thing is, you need to pay attention to the actual amount of power used. How long is your washing machine on for? And the answer is not very long in a day.
Yeah.
It's the big load. It will be about 2 kilowatts. the other things that you mentioned are very small load things, and they would run off like 1 kilowatt typical, totally, a whole lot of them. So you're not actually using the washing machine very long in a day. So when you're not using it, your actual usage of power is quite low. So I wouldn't set your sights too high on this. Your typical petrol generator is capable of producing like 4 or 5 kilowatts of excess power. Now that's easy enough to run a house if you use your common sense. Like I say, my heating system here is electrical, and I only use about 1 kilowatt.
That's pretty conservative. That is pretty good. I mean, everybody wants to kind of cut down and use less power. Now, I've seen schematics of people using or having plans where they can use the ground earth in their garden by using metal plates, that you can actually get about 20 amps if you do it properly from the actual just the ground itself, because the earth is a big battery anyway.
The earth has certainly got a large amount of charge, and it is possible to do it. There are a couple in Brazil, I think it is, either Brazil or Argentina, where they're called, one's called Barbosa, and his colleague is called Leal, L-E-A-L. Now they have produced generators, and a lot of the people on the websites are developing and trying to emulate it, and they were immediately attacked by saying that while they had borrowed a meter from, say, the local university, the police claimed immediately that they'd stolen this meter from the university, therefore they needed to go to jail. This is the sort of opposition that you run into if you say you're going to start producing and selling these things. And so you need to be careful what you do and how you do it. Okay,
and what about them two guys in Australia? I don't know whether you seen the video. It was on Sky News. A couple of Australian guys, and they've had this big motor, and they start it up manually, and once the motor starts up, it goes on, and they just said that it just sort of powers itself. And I think he said you could get up to 34 kilowatts, I think, at one time. I think it was 34. He said something incredible power coming from there. This was a big motor, but it was self-powering once you start it manually. And they were on Sky TV, and they had engineers to come out and verify it and everything else. And they said, what do you think if people turn around and say you're a crackpot? He said, then people have not come out and seen the motor. So unless you've come out and seen the motor, then you can't make any comment, which is fair enough. You know, and he had independent companies going out to actually check the output of the motor. Everybody was kind of jumping on the bandwagon and trying to contact the chap and say, you know, we're interested in buying it and invest in building the actual motor. That was on Sky TV. It's on YouTube. I don't know whether you've seen that.
I don't think I've seen that particular one. There are lots of similar varieties. And like I say, the Chas Campbell does that. Now the thing is, it depends on how much you're willing to pay and how big you need the thing to be and what you're going to use it for. If you make it bigger and bigger, it means the wire that you're winding to get the output from it has to be thicker and thicker and thicker, which makes it much more expensive, bigger, heavier, and there's more heat involved. You have to start organizing cooling and so on. There are so many factors like that. So personally, I would think you're better off with a number of small units rather than one enormous great one.
Which is the idea that I was saying about the little box. We have some questions for you there, Patrick. Pass it off to Steve.
Yeah, just when we were talking earlier, Patrick, about the Tesla Tower, and you mentioned about being able to draw electricity from the atmosphere. That reminded me of the old crystal radio, and anyone who kind of built a crystal radio, a couple of components, and then you just bring it outside, throw up a long antenna, and you can actually, it'll power the thing. So, I mean, that definitely works 100%. But is there some class of an antenna that, say, a regular person could build at home, have on their home, which will be able to extract electricity from the atmosphere and power power a couple of devices, or even if it was just to power charging a phone or something?
Yes, definitely. Yes, there are designs in the ebook which show you how to do that. Generally speaking, you need two Earths separated by something like 6 or 8 feet to make it work well. You can have energies of up to, certainly that will charge a mobile phone without any trouble at all. Up to 100 watts can be operated quite readily, and if you build it larger and use it as a tuned system, you can get up to 10 kilowatts from something like that. But there are quite a number of ways of doing it. The thing is, you don't want to tune to a particular frequency. What you want is you want a device that picks up all frequencies at the same time. If you restrict yourself to one radio station, you're just getting a tiny amount of power. If you take all frequencies, you'll pick up power from the 100 or 200 lightning strikes around the world every second. I mean, there's power everywhere around us, and it's not that difficult to actually access if you want. You have to be neat about how you do it, though. You can put a metal plate up in the eaves of your roof, but you need to insulate it carefully. In other words, you put cling film on the metal plate, and you suspend it with nylon ties, and you insulate all the wire going down, and you locate your tuner for the electrical power halfway down to the ground, and then you take it on down, and every extra tuner module that you add in gives you extra power. So it's really a case of how many tuner modules you're going to bother putting in.
It sounds like it would be a delight for someone who's keen on electronics, or maybe someone who's interested in, I don't know, playing around with antennas, like, I don't know, ham radio guys or stuff like that. But we'll move on, Patrick. There's the ebook that you spoke on, which we're going to get to soon. One of the questions already about the ebook is from Whelan one of the long-time listeners on the OYM chat radio here, and Whelan is wondering, is there a difference between Patrick's ebook site and the new Tux server? I don't know, I don't understand that question. Is that something that you would understand?
Yes, I do understand it. I had originally got 3 particular sites, all mirroring each other, so that it would be difficult to, pardon me, it would be difficult to prevent the information going out. If you knock down one server, the other 2 will be going on.
Yeah.
When I got fairly old, which I am at the moment, I'm in my 70s at this stage, there was a suggestion from a guy in Holland who had got a server on his own particular PC permanently, and that's where the tuks.nl website is actually. There are now 4 websites. 3 of them I support, and 1 of them he supports. And when I am no longer around, that will obviously drop to the one Dutch one, because I can't go on paying the 3 that I originally had if I'm not around.
Okay. Well, I mean, anything we can do to help promote your work, we will gladly do as well. So your information will continue here at OYM.
Can I just jump in there? Patrick, do you know how much data your website is in total?
I think it's about 800 megabytes.
Right. Well, we could easily help you with that and have another mirror over here in Ireland if you want.
That's very kind of you. The trouble is that these things generally get updated very regularly. At the moment, it's version 26.71, which means that it's been updated 267 times so far, which means that every time it's updated, you have to alter it, typically 100 documents on each of the servers, which is an awful lot of work. So while I appreciate your offer, I'm not sure that it's necessarily very practical at the moment.
Right. Well, basically what you need to be doing is looking at something like a sync facility where you can sync your data, where you just do it the once and then synchronize all the other servers. And maybe that's something that we might be able to help you with, but we'll talk about that off air. We can get in touch with you about that and we'll have a look at that, because there might be an easier way to do it for you. But we'll have a look at that. But Steve, sorry, you have more questions there.
Yeah, we just have a comment from Chris. Chris is saying, what a pity Patrick doesn't teach science in schools rather than the brainwashing kids are given by the controllers. One generation could change everything. I totally agree 100%, Chris. We would need a lot of cloning of Patrick, and he should be teaching science in every school across the world. Patrick, Johnny is wondering what your thoughts are on the Iranian physicist, and I believe, is it Keshi or Kesh?
Oh, Keshi. Yeah. Yeah, I know who you mean. I don't know that he's produced anything that at the moment is particularly useful. There are a whole string of systems whereby you can draw in free energy. We mentioned gravity. You've got the effect of pulsing waveform, as in systems like produced by Don Smith. There was a horizontal aerial about a mile long, typically, just off the ground, pulsed with 500 watts input and drawing out 3,000 watts output. There are aerial systems that you put up. There are lots and lots of those that can be done different ways. There are permanent magnet motors, which are very effective. The guy called Shenhe Wang in China produced a very nice series of big motors. He wanted to give them the designs freely to all the governments in the world. He reckoned there were 157 relevant governments, which meant that he just didn't understand how the world works. The governments would not accept or allow in free energy devices like that. But you can certainly produce a permanent magnet motor quite readily. There's a very nice design recently in the ebook from Victor Diduk, who shows you how you can modify the magnetic field by driving steel bolts into a surrounding cylinder. Very clever method, that. There are also, obviously, the fuelless engines, water-fueled engines. There is a toroid produced by Dr. Oleg Gritskovich in, I think it's Russia, and he had that producing 1.5 megawatts for nearly 2 years. It's 2 meters in diameter, a donut-shaped thing, and the only moving part was water inside it, which rotated. So once you got it started, it kept going and produced 1,500 megawatts. Sorry, 1,500 kilowatts for 2 years solidly. You've also got high-efficiency transformers and motors, and there are many designs there in the ebook that you could use if you wish. There's also a very nice mechanical system from a guy called Milkovich, whereby a lever and a pendulum are linked together. And if you have to pump water up from a well by hand, it's a lot of hard work. If you arrange the pumping mechanism to be this lever and the pendulum, you can do the same pumping with one finger, just pushing the pendulum gently. So there are mechanical devices that will give you free energy as well. But I mean, there's a design from Daniel Cook from 100 years back, whereby all you need is copper wire and some iron bars, like welding bars. You have 2 of these, and they're diameter anything from 2 inches to 6 inches, and anything from 2 feet to 6 feet long. And you wind these and cross-connect them, and that will produce for you electricity, provided you put in a current limiting system so that it doesn't run away and burn itself out. But there are so many of these things. It's difficult to actually specify them all.
Yeah.
My problem is the ebook is too big. I've got more than 1 million words in each of 5 languages, and it just is too big for most people.
Yeah. It wants to be. I don't know. We're going to be giving out the link, so I'm going to have a look at it. And because I think the way people are at the moment, we all want to kind of save money if we can, and if we can build something that's quite simple, that's kind of straightforward, that we can do, and then show other people how to do, and then pass it on. I mean, that's really what we'd like to be able to do, or do a video demonstration. Go right, you go down to Maplin's and you buy this part, and you stick it together and you do this, and at the end you get this, and this is how you do it, and you save yourself some money. I mean, I know that sounds very simplistic, but electronics is not that hard from a basic level, and if you could just put something together where you're going to save even a small amount of money on your electricity bill, I mean, it has to be a bonus.
Yes, indeed, that is a sensible way to approach the problem. It definitely is.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of designs that would be suited to that.
And that they're in your ebook as well.
Oh, yes.
Right, well, we're going to do that. We're going to let you go, Patrick, because we know, like, it's getting late for you, and you want to head off there. So I'll tell you what we do. We'll get all your details off you, but I'd like to say a very big thank you for coming on the show and staying on this long, obviously, with us. We've been talking about this technology because it is fascinating. There's so much information out there. It's just getting the people who understand it to actually sit down and do it. And then you also have to convince the other people who are in colleges, who are trained a certain way, who think that you can't go against the laws of physics when you're technically not. There's just more information there that they've not been told about. And they probably don't admit that they don't know about it as well. That's the other side. But a big thank you for coming on, and I'll pass you over to Steve, and Steve will get all your website details and your ebook details.
Thank you.
Yeah, Patrick, I want to echo what Alan has said there. It's been fantastic. The information is amazing. I know the ebook is, well, if you don't have increased downloads after tonight, then I don't know what's wrong. But can you just give us your website there, and I'll get it up on the link, and then people will be able to go ahead and visit that and get the book and just check out your work?
Yes, sure, no problem. The website is www.free-energy, E-N-E-R-G-Y, -info.com. That's www.free-energy-info.com.
And we also have on the link here that if anyone if they don't want to go and look at all the stuff when you're on the website, they can just go to /pjkbook.pdf, and I will post that link as well, and that will get you straight into the ebook. Patrick, a big thank you. Sorry, I was going to do your bit there.
No, you go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, no, this is the bit where Alan normally says, will you just stay on the line a second? We're going to go to a quick musical break.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMIreland.com and ICRadioNetwork.com.
We were just talking to Patrick there during the break, and we asked him, someone on People's Internet Radio asked for Patrick's email address, so he was kind enough to give it to us. I have posted it up there on the chat rooms, both of them, and if anyone wishes to contact Patrick in relation to the book or anything else, he said he'd be more than willing to communicate with you.
Yeah, excellent. I'll probably be touching base with Patrick during the week anyway. Brilliant information. Again, just if you're interested and you want to get into electronics and you want to kind of have a gently approach, there are kind of basic manuals out there, but ideally what you want to do is test the circuit. So as I say, you can go down to Maplin's, and they have a program, they did have a program called Live Wire, and there's another one called PCB Circuit, and you basically install the software on your computer, and you start learning, you look at the circuits, and start practicing with basic circuits, and then you draw them with this software, and then you test them to see if they work. And then, if that works, then you go and get the components that you need in Maplin's or wherever you want to buy them, and start getting the breadboard circuit and start building your circuits. And that's probably one of the best ways to learn. I mean, I would have loved that when I did my basic electronics. I did electronics as part of some training I did a few years ago, and we had to make our own circuit boards and stuff like that. And if we had a computer program at the time to actually do that, it would have been great. Would have saved a lot of hassle trying to track down where the fault is. A multimeter is obviously handy as well for testing. But this software is quite good. LiveWire is called, a PCB circuit, I believe it's called. But we'll have a chat with Patrick during the week. Now, one of the things that I want to mention before we finish up the show, I didn't talk about it during Alan's week. I thought we'd leave it till the end of the show, is the whole idea of this. They say that we're in representative democracy in Ireland, right? That's apparently we're supposed to be in a representative democracy. And basically that means that we are governed by consent. So basically, ideally is if you don't consent to something, well then it doesn't apply to you, because what's the opposite to representative democracy? Well, it must be a dictatorship. And a dictatorship means slavery. Now, according to the European Courts of Human Rights, which I printed out here, Article 4, Prohibition of Slavery and Forced Labour of the European Convention on Human Rights, provides that no one shall be held in slavery or servitude, no one shall be required to perform forced or compulsory labour. And there's a few other things on it. But basically, now, if the European Court of Human Rights said that slavery and servitude are illegal and are not allowed, and we're supposed to be in a representative democracy, well then, that means that when we say we do not consent, like for anything, then if they go against that and they lock us up due to coercion or threats of violence and or prison, then obviously they're illegal. They're doing that against the European courts. So, before we even go anywhere down the road of, looking at the law and stuff like that, surely if the fundamentals of the law of the land say, now, Josephine Feely, we all know that Vin found the information on the Inland Revenue website, and I turned it into a PDF and I sent it out to a few TDs. And Josephine Feely has on that we are in a representative democracy, and there was a couple of listeners emailed their local TDs, and we had a couple of emails in who've also said that we are in a representative democracy. So they're saying it. Now, this is what I say to all the listeners. If you ever get near a TD, ask them that simple question: are we in a representative democracy? Just yes or no. Well, if they say yes, then try and get that recorded or try and get it on an email. If they say no, then you say, well, if we're not in it, what are we in? And if they say, well, they're not going to say we're in a dictatorship, do we have to find out what we are? Because the other side of this is that if you go into a job or go into a house and you're not allowed out, then that's slavery, because your freedom's been taken away. So if we are in a representative democracy, then we should be able to go, and we don't want to be in that democracy. We don't want to be, we're actually governed by consent, but we don't want to be in that society. The society, by the way, that doesn't have a name. We should be able to go to a government department and go, excuse me, but I don't want to be part of this society anymore and all the laws. Where do I sign to leave this society? But nobody can tell me where I can go or what form to fill out or what government department to go to actually leave this society so the laws don't apply to me. So we must be in servitude and slavery, because if you can't leave a system, then we must be under slavery and servitude, which means that it's illegal anyway. So this is just my take on it, and I'm more open to the listeners on PIR and the listeners on OYM to have a think about that. And then if there's any, if you have any ideas about it, then let me know. But any system, as I say, we're in a representative democracy, we should be able to decide to leave it because we're not under slavery. But where do you go to sign off? I don't know. So that's just something that I have here. As I say, you can go on the internet and you can go to Article 4 of the European Courts of Human Rights. Article 4, it says it. So check it out yourself. But that's my question to any politician or guard or anybody, is to say, right, are we in a representative democracy? And if we are, that's great. I don't consent. And if they say, well, what do you mean you don't consent? That's the law. And say, well, hang on a minute. You've just said we're in a representative democracy. Now, that means we're governed by consent, and I have the right to govern myself, which means I don't consent to your laws. And that will completely confuse them, and, they'll say, oh, well, you have to go by the law. And I said, well, I am going by the law.
I think you'd be wasting your time. Seriously, I think you'd be completely wasting your time. You go up to any politician, are we in a representative democracy? Of course he's going to say yes, but then, that's lip service, and you try and exercise that right, and it's a completely different story. Actually, did you see there during the week as well, which I just remembered now, so I'll give it a mention. Somebody questioned on anti-social media there on Facebook that some of the Gardaí, alleged Gardaí, that are at these water protests and that are being violent towards people, they're wondering if they're actually guards. They reckon that they could be just hired individuals wearing guarded jackets. Did you hear that about that?
I heard something about that on Facebook, yeah. Are they really guards, was the headline. Curiosity. I don't know. The other thing I'm working on, which I'll show you after the show, is I'm working on an Android app for OYM and a couple of other apps for other little things. I'm using a website to actually build them. Well, it's so frustrating because the actual website says that you should be able to run a radio stream through it and set it up. But I've done everything that needs to be done, but the stream is not working. So that's the frustrating part. Otherwise, I would have an Android app for OYM out there ready to download and a new up-to-date version of it with Facebook and everything else on it. But we don't have it at the moment because the company's not playing ball. I suppose I'm going to have to pay them money. That's probably what it is. That's the secret ingredient.
Yeah,
I paid them a few quid. That's probably the secret ingredient,
Yeah, it always is, though, isn't it? I mean, you get some. You will get something for nothing, but you won't get, especially like the likes of these products. They'll give you the kind of the watered down version, but if you want the bugs ironed out, then you have to pass around the shekels.
Yeah, I'll have to send them an email. But we're working on a couple of Android apps, and fingers crossed, I'll have it done if we sort out the stream issue. I don't know why it's not working now. I don't know whether people have come across this, but apparently there are some phones out there that don't work with certain applications or don't work with certain features or facilities. I don't know why. It's very strange. But as I say, I'm looking into it. If anybody knows of any app development websites, I looked at a few of them and I've kind of signed off a few. But if there's any more you come across, send them over to me. Let me know. It'd be great because it'd be great to have another OYM app with a stream that works on it. I don't think our last one didn't have the stream on it.
The app?
Yeah.
Well, I had a link.
Yeah, I think it had a link, but
there was definitely a link, and it did play it through.
The PLS file,
yeah, and
you had to have it. So I'm trying to get it all in one kind of app. Right, okay. Next week we have Byron on from the Hub. Byron's going to be coming on, and he's going to be telling us all about what the Hub are up to and what the Hub are doing. Similar to the Land League, going down to the courts, helping people, out of a situation if they're in arrears or up, mortgage issues like that. Just teaching them what to say and to the judge and to the registrar, not so much to the judge. They shouldn't go to the judge's list, should be able to deal with it. That couple, I believe, that we went down to in Kells, I believe they're still there as far as I know. They're still in the house and there's no sheriff turned up, so fingers crossed. And the fund's getting there as well. I know Finbar's under the weather at the moment, so he's not on tonight. But the fund is getting there and the money's coming in, so it's brilliant. So thanks for everybody who did donate to the fund to help that couple. The money will go to a good cause anyway. And on Vin's show later on, just as we finish up now, we're going to have Ray Hall from DDI is going to be with Vin after OEM, so that'll be worthwhile tuning into. I know Ray's been there a few times with the Land League meeting in County Louth. I had a chat with Ray. Ray also runs, I believe, the DDI website, and so it should be quite interesting to see what's going on there. But otherwise, that's really it. I've been up to my eyeballs doing various bits and pieces and just keeping busy. And even yesterday, on Facebook. I didn't touch Facebook for the whole day yesterday. I didn't go into it. I was just...
My God. Did you have withdrawal symptoms?
I did. I had my head down in the computer, working on the Android apps, getting completely frustrated as to why they're saying it should work, but my phone, it doesn't work on my phone. It drives me mad. I'll show you later. I'll show you after the show anyway.
Yeah. Just speaking of Finbar and the Land League, I've just put the link up there on the chat room, on both chat rooms actually, to the National Land League, to their new website, which Finbar was promoting there, and I think you may find the link on there if anyone has a couple of euro that they would like to donate to the Land League for this couple who are being threatened with eviction from their home in Kells. I believe they need €1,200, and I think the last time we had a conversation with Finbar, he said it was up to about €700. So a little bit of a push there. If anyone has, I mean, look, we're not telling people what to do, but if you have a couple of euro, it will go towards the 1,200 that these people need. Seemingly, the bank will negotiate some class of a deal with them, but in order to do that, they first have to come up with the €1,200 that has to be in their account before the bank will enter into negotiation. So, if you can, that would be fantastic. I know Finbar and all the lads over there at the Land League would really appreciate that, and that couple in Kells, they would really, really, really appreciate it.
Brilliant stuff. That's excellent. Okay, well, listen, we're going to finish up, but have a good week and take it easy. Stay safe. Myself, Alan James, and as I say, Byron is on next week from the Hub. We also have Dr. Joseph Chipolone coming back on in a couple of weeks' time, and he is talking about certain things that are going on. Again, keep an open mind, as we always say. Open your mind, and don't be too judgmental. Do the research, check it out. And if there's any news that you come across, email us, let us know what's going on, because it's always good to know if there's anything happening. As I say, with any products that you come across, like toothpaste or cordial drinks and stuff like that, that you know are good and they don't have aspartame, they don't have fluoride, send us over the links, the product information. We'll try and track it down and we'll give it to the local SuperValu. And maybe this is something that we can start a movement on, going into local shops and saying this. By the way, the health, for people who are local to Kells, County Meath, the local health shop in Kells does sell a colloidal silver in a bottle, because I bought some. Now, it's about €23, so it's not exactly cheap. But I got some anyway, just to have it. And, comes in a nice little bottle, so it's handy.
A
just
nice little presentation bottle?
A nice little presentation bottle.
Have you used it?
I have, little spray, just,
yeah. There's no taste of it, shouldn't there?
No, it's just water, what can I say? Okay, so for myself, Alan James, take it easy, have a good night, have a good week, stay safe, and we'll catch you later.
Okay, for myself, Stephen George, have a good week.